Homewreckers, what's your story? Do you regret it? Story 1. Something I can actually answer. It was my first job. I was young, a little naive, and very impressed by my manager. He was older, more experienced, smart, and very charming. After a while, I realized I was developing a crush. Okay, it happens. I'll just ignore it. And did just that. I maintained a strictly professional behavior for nearly 2 years. But there was a catch. Buried feelings just don't go away on their own, especially when you see your crush every day. They grow. I ended up looking for another job, even though I really liked the one I had. I landed a good one and gave my 2-week notice. He was so upset. I'd never seen him like this. After that, it got messy. The workplace dynamic was out of whack. Coworkers started to refer to me giving him the 2-week notice as our divorce. I left the company on a sour note. Few months later, there was a Christmas party. I was on friendly terms with most of my ex-coworkers, so they invited me to come by, saying that it was all right with them and he would be happy to see me. I came. We all drank a lot. I isolated myself with my ex-manager to apologize for leaving. We ended up talking the whole evening. It got flirty. We held hands, then quickly separated like teenagers caught by their parents. We wisely went to our respective homes tonight, but craving for more. The emotional dam was broken and a flood of repressed emotions was ready to destroy everything in its wake. I'll skip the details of the affair. Suffice to say that we pursued each other like addicts chase their highs. He finally confessed to his wife, left her, and went to live with me. We have the kids 50-50 now. Not gonna lie, as I was reading this story, it sounded like it was going to be one of those fake-outs where it turns to be a retelling of some classic cartoon or TV show or something. Like that one story about how goofy kids are running around in a van and it turns out to be a description of Scooby-Doo and his gang. This one was a really slow build-up. That description of the dam is quite apropos. It's kind of weird that everything resolved happily for them. I wonder if there was any other kind of feedback from this. Story 2. One of my BFFs was one. She met him at the coffee shop she worked at, and he was a regular. She knew he was married because once in a while he would go there with his wife and kid. Well, one week his wife was away to see her parents with a kid, and they started the affair. It lasted 6 years. She would tell me that he loved her way more than his wife, and that he kept promising that he would leave the wife. 5 years into it, she gets pregnant, and so does the wife. He starts pressuring my friend to get an abortion. She says no, that the baby is the product of their love. She has the baby, and so does the wife. 1 year later, my friend is at work, and she had the baby with her, who looks just like his dad. The guy will go in. The baby screams, "Daddy!" The wife gets confused until she really sees the baby and is a dead copy of her husband and her baby. She goes ballistic. My friend told me she did it on purpose, since he wouldn't leave his wife. So she was forcing the wife to leave him, so he would be with her. Well, the wife got a divorce, a huge settlement, and the guy resented my friend so much for what she did, he gave up his parental rights of the kid and moved across the country. Edit. Since everyone is asking about the legality of giving up parental rights, I'm no law expert. I don't know if he actually signed a paper giving up or if they just reached an agreement where he gave her full custody. It's what she told me, so it's what I wrote. And since I've heard about it before, I never really questioned it. It's entirely possible that he just gave her full custody. And here we have one that completely blows up. This guy just lost everything. Seems like 3 people just all went their separate ways, quite literally. Really tragic. Story 3. He asked me out before he started dating her, and I said no, for a bunch of reasons that had nothing to do with my feelings for him. They were together for almost 2 years, and during that time we kept in touch. It was innocent enough, talking over Facebook once in a while, joking around, and I would tell him funny stories about bad dates I was going on. One night, we were both drunk texting, and things got super flirty. I realized that we were no longer talking as just friends. The next day, I messaged him and told him this wasn't fair to his girlfriend, and that we had to stop talking online. We stopped. 6 months later, he sent me a message saying that he and his girlfriend had broken up and asked me to hang out to catch up. I hadn't been sure if it was a date or not until he smooched me. We were inseparable from that day on. Unfortunately, he had failed to tell me that he had literally broken up with his girlfriend the day before he called me, and I got a reputation for breaking them up, which I kind of did, even though he never technically cheated. We're still together 10 years later, though, and sadly, she still resents me for stealing him, and I know she and her friends still think he cheated on her with me. I don't blame her, though. I'd have been heartbroken if I was her, and I still feel bad for how it played out. Is this really technically cheating? There was a whole 6-month gap that they didn't talk. I don't think this girl should get any blame for this. The guy had 6 months to formulate his decision and he made it. Breaking up right before calling the girl was a little miscalculated, but I don't see any cheating happening, really. Story 4. I was labeled as the homewrecker, even though nothing actually happened between me and this girl. We had a bit of flirty banter at work over the course of a few weeks during the summer. I kept coming in the mornings to post-it notes left on my desk with flirty messages, and I would return the favor, of course. I was unaware that she was engaged and had a child, and we carried this flirty banter on until one day she came over mine and we sat down and watched a movie together. Literally nothing happened, and her significant other clocked onto her not being home at her usual time and started spamming her with calls. I walked her down to her car and managed to lock myself out of my house. That's another story, which I've told in this other forum. Go into work the next day and everything is normal. Walk out of work and there he is, the girl's significant other, standing at the back of his van searching for tools. She messages me and tells me not to leave the building, to which I oblige. After this, we split things off and don't talk anymore. From what I know, they're still together and she has another child on the way. Story 5. The story of my sister's friend. So my sister's friend Jezebel met a guy, Tony, on a dating site. Seemed good, but later revealed that he was married and had 2 kids. But she was already involved with him for the past few months, so she ignored it. He promised to leave his wife for her. She believed him. Well, Jezebel got pregnant, and the wife finally found out about the affair. She kicked Tony out, who moved in with Jezebel. Little did she know, Tony was actually unemployed, so Jezebel now had to support the both of them. But Tony was a leech. They got kicked out of their apartment for not paying rent, so they ended up living in her car. Luckily, Jezebel's parents helped them get back on their feet. So Jezebel has the baby, and a few months later gets offered a really good job 3 states away. But Tony, who is still unemployed, keeps getting and losing jobs, makes her decline because he doesn't want to move away from his other 2 kids. So she decides and stays, not making double what she was making. After about 3 years, she finally figures out that Tony will never have a consistent job because he would rather just sit around and smoke lettuce and play video games all day. So she boots him. Too long didn't read? My sister's friend started dating a married guy who was a huge jobless loser. Story 6. Huge regret. If anything good came of it, it was that I learned not to be so judgmental. I married at 19 and divorced at 23. My ex was the one cheating. I used to say any woman who would do that is a hussy. After the divorce, I was a bit lost and a little wild. I hesitantly began a relationship with a guy I considered a friend and trusted. He told me he would leave his wife for me, and I believed him. I knew her, and while I liked her, she did cheat on him multiple times, so it wasn't hard for me to believe he was leaving. Pretty soon, I tired of sneaking around and began to pressure him. Turns out, I wasn't supposed to really believe he'd leave her. That was the end of that short-lived stupid mistake of mine. Later, he spilled the beans to a friend of his who told someone else, and the wife found out. Started driving by and wanting to fight me, screaming names as she drove by the house. I told her I didn't want to fight her and that I regretted what happened. She said she could kick my butt if she wanted to, but I wasn't going to defend myself. I was already kicking myself for being so stupid. That was pretty much the end of it. It was many years ago, and it still makes me feel bad. Probably my top regret ever, and definitely out of character for me. This was painful to read. It's so sad that bad behavior begat bad behavior. Do you think she cheated because she was taking revenge on her ex that she divorced because he was cheating? I guess she found out it wasn't so fun being on the other end of it. Story 7. A friend of mine met a guy at a party while he was there with his girlfriend of 6 years. They were talking a lot throughout the night, and he gave her his number. He continued to text her all the time, and they would talk non-stop, super flirty messages. It then turned into hanging out, first just with friends, while his girlfriend was not there, then just the 2 of them. He would always tell her not to say anything to their mutual friends because his girlfriend is very jealous and possessive and would get mad. We all told her to stop doing this, but she continued insisting there was nothing wrong and they were just friends hanging out. He ended up proposing to his girlfriend while still secretly hanging out with my friend. She never mentioned anything happening, but I'm pretty sure it did, and she wanted to avoid us judging her, so she never went into detail. He eventually stopped contacting her altogether without an explanation. My guess is his girlfriend saw the texts or something, but I know for a fact if he didn't stop, she would have continued hanging out with him and eventually starting a full-blown affair. Story 8. Was sitting at work on my lunch break one day, getting a message from my friend's husband. He's drunk and high and wants me to mess around. This was the second time ever speaking to the man, mind you. So I remind him that I'm his wife's friend, have never met him face to face, and give him the chance to tell his wife what just happened. Then I had to make a choice. Do I tell her or not? Because some people don't want to know, or they blame you instead of blaming the significant other. Send her a message and tell her that I have something. She says, send me everything to her about her husband, but I need to know if she wants to know or not. That night after work, she confronts him. He deleted the conversation, but I had sent her screenshots. They got divorced over it, and other things too, she told me. And they have dual custody of their 8-year-old son. As for whether it was worth it or not, I feel like she and I are closer friends now, but I can't really say. Story 9. Obligatory not me story, but basically a few years ago, my aunt went to Las Vegas with a bunch of her friends. No one thinks much of it until she starts introducing us to her boyfriend, who I'll call D. We're all happy for them, and within a year they're engaged and married. Pretty wild, but admittedly normal for my aunt. This is her third marriage. So D is actually Canadian. We're American, and has a 5-year-old daughter back home. He only really sees her a few times a year, and mostly his ex-girlfriend has custody. I thought there was nothing wrong with this whole story until my mom told me that the big wedding my aunt had with us was all fake. My aunt and D got married in Vegas before we even met him. Turns out D was about to get married to his girlfriend in Canada and was at his bachelor party in Vegas, got drunk, and married my aunt. Wow, talk about coming in right under the deadline. And I'm seeing a pattern here with these stories. The subject was to talk directly to the people who cheated. A lot of these stories are becoming secondhand. I want to hear directly from the cheaters. Story 10. I don't know if this counts because they were separated for 2 years and in the midst of a divorce, but she definitely called me a homewrecker when I started dating him and they had already been separated for a year and a half, but their divorce hadn't been finalized. She called me sobbing and screaming profanities at me. Told me they were a family, no kids, but I get it. I felt bad at the time. I told him that I didn't want to date a technically married man and that I broke up with him. He still went through with the divorce and found me months later. We started dating again, and now we're happily married. I know we're both good people. I know she wasn't a bad person, just two people in a bad relationship. There were lots of threats of self-harm, and someone who shouldn't have gotten into the middle before it was fully resolved. I wish her happiness, but I don't feel guilty for finding mine. I've been cheated on by my ex, and the woman knew full well we were together, not separated. And even then, I don't blame her. It was his choice, and our relationship was dying, probably just too hard for him to end it. Story 11. I will give you my story. One of my friends was miserable in marriage. He married his high school sweetheart. One child, 15-year marriage. One day, he meets someone 20 plus years younger than him at work and starts a side hustle. He tells his wife he's taking trips with me and lunches with me to distract. One day, I get a call with a hysterical, jilted wife asking me how long I knew of their sordid affair, with very colorful conversation. I told her I had no idea, truthfully. They go to counseling, but he never wanted to stay married. So he began to groom his finances and other things to prepare to leave over the next year. He leaves her, and a year later, he's married to the younger lady. A year after that, they have a baby. So I guess he's happy. Story 12. My wife and I both are. I'll try and condense. Met when she was 14 and I was 16. Friends first, then dated off and on through high school. To be fair, I always wanted her, but she wasn't ready at a young age. Never led me on or anything. We remained friends and dated other people. She went to college out of town. First year or so, I'd see her on trips home or when I'd drive to her. We kinda drifted apart. Her senior year of college, hadn't seen her for over a year. She started dating some dude, I started dating a girl. She graduated and moved out of state. Girlfriend and I were pretty serious. I was going to propose, called her basically begging her to stop me. She wouldn't. We both married our partners at the time. Does this sound like either of them cheated? This sounds like the beginning paragraph of a story where they meet up later and have an affair. I don't get it. Maybe I'm missing a part of this story. It just sounds like a young relationship where they just drifted apart. Story 13. Deep one, this. I went with a married woman. She knew I was seeing another woman, so we were just having fun together. Sneaked around a lot, had spicy time everywhere for about a year before she got pregnant. Situation was, she was on a long waiting list for IVF treatment, and had it all the while we were bumping uglies. We knew the path her marriage was taking, and she let it drift away. Husband was too much into computers to notice her. Abortion was booked, and when I was driving her to it, I turned the car around and went back home. Story 14. My family had a family friend whose relationship we later learned was a product of an affair. The man was married and met his current wife and started having an affair with her. She got pregnant, and he left his wife to start a family with her. The story would have ended happily there, but he started cheating on her, and she was always paranoid about his infidelity. Like, come on, lady, what did you expect? Anyway, to get back at him, she started to come after my dad, who was more than welcoming to her advances. By the way, he was still married to my mom. Story 15. I slept with a married woman like twice after talking like 2 weeks. Turned out she was pregnant and told me I needed to go to the doctor with her to get an official pregnancy test. I was 21, 22, still fairly naive in the pregnancy knowledge department. The test was like a week after we slept together, but she was like 8 or 9 weeks pregnant. It finally clicked, and I stepped away pretty quick. That didn't stop her from naming her baby after me. That kid has probably graduated college by now. So what was the woman's end goal here? Was she trying to trap this random dude into a pregnancy? For what reason? Was she trying to get back at her husband? Did the husband cheat? The actions here are very incredibly weird. Story 16. Crazy story, but I was outed to a small community as a homewrecker and a hussy by a wife of a 50-plus guy at the age of 13 after he drunk violated me. Of course, she somehow left the last part out of her speeches to other people, and I had no idea before I was 16 and never returned to that place ever again. My real regret in this situation is listening to my grandmother and not telling anything to my parents so the police could be involved. Story 17. Yes, I did not know he was married, 30 years married. He was military. I worked on a base as a civilian. I moved in with him and everything. Turns out his wife lived in another state and never visited. There was nothing that made me think he was married. No hushed phone calls or anything. After we broke up, he told her about me, hoping it would make me take him back. She divorced him, and against my better judgment, 6 months later, we got back together. It was the worst year of my life. Story 18. I got called one by the ticked-off wife of the guy I dated for a few months. The problem was that was the first time I had a clue he was married, and if I'd known before then, I would have broken it off immediately. Thinking back, I should have found it weird that he never invited me over to his place, but yeah. There's a difference between being paranoid and being cautious. If that was the only clue that she had, maybe she still should have pursued it. Maybe asked him about it. He seemed to hide the rest of his tracks really well. Story 19. I didn't know he was married until she contacted me. I got lucky as hell. She found out what he was up to. She knew I didn't know and simply asked me to meet with her to confront him and understood I was blindsided and understandably hurt and guilty all in one. So we met him together at a coffee shop. It was awkward as all get out. I cut him out of my life, and after she and I had a talk, we also broke contact. I still feel bad. Story 20. See, the thing is, they sleep with you, then tell you they have a girlfriend, wife, boyfriend, whatever afterwards, and not to contact them in public or text them. And that Grindr profile might say anything all the way up to pretending to be a single available guy. I've been Mr. Homewrecker at least 6 times, and I'm so fed up with trashy guys doing this. I'ma find their bae on Facebook next time if it kills me. Story 21. The homewrecker in my story does not believe she's a homewrecker and straight up told my BFF that she didn't ruin my relationship with my ex-husband. And before anyone jumps in with the whole, oh, there must have been something wrong before she showed up, just take my word for it that while I didn't make the best decisions 100% of the time, they both did me dirty. She sounds mad, understandably so. And is the alleged homewrecker actually delusional here? Maybe she thinks she did nothing wrong because the guy was saying he was unhappy with his marriage or something. Maybe the guy and the homewrecker are in collusion with each other and delusion with each other. Story 22. She was beating him. Every day he would have bruises or scratch marks, and he couldn't do anything because then she would lie and say it was self-defense. My fiancé and I talked and figured out a way to get her to leave is to make it look like he was cheating on her. Made it look like she caught us in a compromising position. Story 23. My fiancé's mom was a homewrecker. She fell in love with a married man who had 2 kids and would sneak round his house when his wife was at work. His wife actually caught them in the act and tried to stab them. He moved in with his mistress and had 2 kids with her, including my fiancé. Not gonna lie, I'm happy that my mother-in-law is a homewrecker. Story 24. Well, Technically, I met him 3 years after they separated, but she is convinced that we've been carrying on a secret affair this entire time, and I'm the reason their marriage is going through a rough patch, a 4-year rough patch. I think at that point, it's not her being a homewrecker. This is beyond being on a break. Breaks don't last 4 years. I say this one gets a pass. Story 25. People in relationships who publicly dated me as if they were single are the homewreckers. I wasn't the person who made a commitment to someone and then broke it. They wrecked their own home. Story 26. My sister's husband, Carl, left her to get a new girlfriend named Linda, who worked at Walmart all the time. Me, being the great sister, I went up to Linda and started to flirt with her. We ended up making out in the bathroom at Walmart. This, of course, broke up Linda and Carl. Ooh. Interesting turn on that one. I wonder how she knew if that would work. I wonder if she knew that would work. She must have a lot of confidence to give that a try without full-on knowledge whether she was attracted to women or not. Story 27. There would be no homewrecker if the significant other didn't cheat. Putting all the blame on the person outside the relationship is a bad choice in my honest opinion. Story 28. No shame in being paid to do a job, regardless of what it is. I've been in the demolition business for 20 years, and swinging a wrecking ball into a house still gets me excited. Story 29. Lost my virginity to a married woman. Got gonorrhea. Not worth it. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.